you ended up being in the ring in Montreal and doing a promo with CM Punk, who, you know, people still chanting for to this day. What do you remember about that? I mean, I know Jerry Lawler had his heart attack that night, so it was kind of all, that show's not really remembered, but what do you remember being in the ring with Punk, and, you know, because he'd always said he looked up to you?
Well, it was a big honor for me, and it was fun to go back to Montreal and be part of that sort of night. And I was really, it was just all a big honor for me to be part of all that. And you know, I want to say that when I worked at SummerSlam with John Cena, I was really impressed with John Cena. I was like, I don't know if it even matters, like when you talk about wrestling today, but I remember when you're mapping out these matches, you know, when you're plotting them out and figuring out what everyone's going to do. 10-man SummerSlam match that we had. There's so much, you know, when this happens, somebody's got to be standing here, and then this guy's going to tag in next, and you know, you got to follow the bouncing ball all the way through. And I was one of those guys that, you know, when you sit down with your opponents or whether it's a tag team or single match, you start to walk through the match, like you visualize it. Like you talk about the whole match, and then you go back to square one and you go, okay, now let's talk about let's paint the whole match just for verbally, so we both got it. And you can only imagine how 10 different wrestlers, how complicated something like that can be. I mean, I know because I've been in those situations before. But I always was very methodical. Like I had to have everything. Like when you start talking about it, okay, this is what happens. The bell rings, this guy and this guy are gonna start, and then this happens, and then he tags so-and-so, and this happens, and he's gonna do these spots, and then everyone just keeps filling in the blanks as you keep talking. And then what happens? And it's like, okay, and then so-and-so tags, and then this guy comes in, and then that's when he leans over and tags me, and then you guys are gonna do this spot. And anyway, everybody starts to know the whole script. And I was always one of those kind of guys that whenever you hit a bump where somebody goes, okay, I don't know what happens next. And then you stop the movie kind of thing, and you say, okay, this is what happens, and you explain it, and then everyone's got it. And a lot of wrestlers will just keep talking from there and say, okay, then we'll follow up with this, and you keep piece the movie back together. But I was always one of those kind of guys that as soon as you trip over something and you don't have the story set, I would go all the way back to the beginning of the movie and say, okay, we start over again. We'll start the whole thing over again, and we'll talk, and then you go through the whole thing till you get to that little bump that the guy, and then you get past that, and then there's another bump. And as soon as there's a bump where people start to forget what they're doing, you start all the way to the beginning, and there's always guys going, oh, listen, we don't have to go all the way back to the beginning. But it's like, yeah, we have to go back to the beginning because we need to have one full picture without any mistakes so we don't screw up in the ring. And what I loved about John Cena, that he was such a pro in that match, in the sense that I watched him do exactly what I always did. It was like, as soon as somebody screwed up, and it's like, okay, we start all over again and tell the whole story until there's another bump. And I always admired that about John Cena, that he was kind of, because I never was around John Cena, but that's how I did things. And I saw him exactly the same way, where it had to be perfect. Until you could run the whole thing by without any mistakes, that's when you can say, okay, we'll see you in the ring. And that's what I loved about working with John Cena.
So Davey, when I saw him in the dressing room on the Saturday night, I was like, why did you call me? I've been trying to call you, and I was pretty mad at him. And he just, sometimes Davey was like a little brother or a little kid to me. And I remember he just confessed, he goes, I'm and he told me, he goes, he told me he'd been up with Jim Neidhart for 72 hours. They'd been doing cocaine for 3 straight days, and he hadn't slept.